And we welcome you back to this year's Sooner Athletic Conference virtual media day for our football side of things. I'm Jim Powers, Assistant Commissioner of the SAC, and we're going to head back out to Oklahoma. We're going to go to Panhandle State and their head coach, Cory Miller. And coach, last year, a 5-5 year, but you guys really came on towards the back end of the season, winning 3 of your last 4. Talk about how that ending of the year last year kind of is pushing you into the offseason and getting your guys ready to really get after it this year.
Um, it, it was, kind of, it was a good, that's kind of weird to try to explain because, at the end of the season, we kind of rattled off some wins. We didn't end the last game, in a fashion that we wanted to, in terms of that type of stuff. But we saw glimpses, throughout the season, even early in the season. We had a 4-quarter battle with Louisiana Christian, who were leading going in the fourth quarter, who obviously went to the playoffs out of our conference. And then obviously Tex West, we were, I think, up by a point going in the fourth quarter. And then they had a good fourth quarter to finish us out. And so we saw kind of a little bit of what we could be, and that we're not that far away. But what was missing a little bit, obviously, besides kind of depth and adding some pieces of the pie is the consistency, and those mistakes, those things that we did at critical times and stuff like that. Anytime you play, a tight football game, every team makes mistakes. It's who can make the fewest of them. And, we made a few more mistakes than the other teams made. And I think that's kind of been kind of the message, going into the off season is, it's not really about who we play. It's about us and controlling what we can control. And if we can improve, and put ourselves in better situations and capitalize on other situations, then, there's potentially 2 or 3 more wins, possibly for us out there. And that's really kind of been what, our messaging has been to the players this offseason is, it's about us, and, we're there, but we got to take that next step.
And you talk about that, and you talk about a lot of young men that kind of got battle tested last year because you've got an outstanding core group of leaders coming back for you. We'll talk about those kids before we go offense, defense, but talk about just those junior seniors that you're going to be relying on as that core leadership group in the locker room, on the field, during practices.
Absolutely. We're in a very unique situation, and I really refer to this as year one. Last year was kind of year 0 for us. And, the reason we say that is, we were hired, basically beginning of April. And so it's a tough time. When I first got the entire staff together, we walked out for the first spring ball. We're having to have guys show us where, equipment was and things like that. And we didn't know everybody's name, and we're trying to figure out who goes where. And, there's some kids recruited before us. Then we had to go out and be like, hey, we need more guys to play. And so then we're starting to kind of recruit here. And what I kind of refer to as that fourth quarter when you're going into the summer. And that's not the time you really want to start to be recruiting. And so there's a lot of like kind of different pieces that we're kind of getting, put together. And now, we kind of came in with about 95 guys. We're reporting with 120 going into tomorrow's first practice. And so we're in a much better situation. We have probably, depending, on years and stuff, probably 13 to 16 seniors. Last year we had 7, so we've doubled our senior number. We've brought in over 20 transfers at various positions that be sophomore, junior standing, in terms of that. So that helped kind of bridge kind of some of that gap and that melt that kind of fell. Sometimes we have the coaching change, you start that turnover and things like that. And then we have a freshman class of like 55 guys, and so we have that really big freshman class, which is what we need, kind of the first cornerstone foundation we got. So the nice thing is we got, Brandon Stevens, who's been a 4 years, going his 4th year, but a 3-year start before here at quarterback. We returned Raylan Robertson, who was a good receiver, kick returner for us last year. Jalen Partita has been a 4-year player for us, as well. Offensively, you're starting to get some upperclassmen offensive linemen in there, brought in with the ones we got the transfers in, with Gabe Chalenzia has been here for 4 years on the offensive line. Armando Luciera has been here for 3 years on the offensive line. Peasy or Pritchett for us, Demontre. He's been here for his 4th year. So now to go on top of with some of these other ones, we got those on the outside of the ball. So like offensively, um, I really like the pieces we're putting together there. Defensively, we're going to be young. I don't think by eligibility standards we'll have a single senior on the defensive side of the ball from an eligibility standpoint. But we do return a couple players for us that were big contributors for us. CJ Holmes started 8 games for us. We have. Low Snead, who led the conference, I think, in the regular season in interceptions for us back at safety. And, he was a quarterback in fall camp and we moved him over late. So now he's got a full off season at safety. And I'm really excited to see what he can bring. DK Watson played D line for us out of necessity. He's going to kick back the linebacker, which is his home. He's had a tremendous off season and is a very, very talented player. And I think could end up, when it's all said and done, one of the better ones in the SAC when his time's done. We returned a couple guys on the defensive line, but we brought in a lot of new faces and on the defense, and we got to kind of see how that all shakes out there. Our punter Garrett's back, and another senior, very good punter for us. So I'll mention all SAC last year, and so kind of rely him heavily in the special teams aspect of things.
Talk a little bit about on the offensive side. You mentioned Stevens coming back. It's got to be good. Last year, once again, your staff starts late, getting that whole playbook put in. And he did a really nice job for you guys. And now that he's got that year under his belt, it's got to be satisfying to know that you got a guy out there that you can count on, especially as an extension of you and your offensive staff out there that knows the playbook now, that knows how to check in the stuff and get – especially that wide receiving core that you all have into the right positions to make some pretty big plays.
Absolutely. And the coaches have been in this league. They played against Brandon. They know like how good of an athlete he is. He's not your typical quarterback that's 6'3" and stands in the pocket. He is a really good athlete. He's put together. He's a pound for pound one of the strongest guys we got into the weight room. We joke with him all the time is he's a running back, and that type of deal. And we're going to use him in that capacity. The nice thing is we brought in a couple extra quarterbacks, and last year we didn't really have it, somebody that we felt comfortable with backing up. So we didn't do. There's a whole chunk of our offense that's in now that we didn't do last year that we started doing towards the end. If you look at Brandon's stats at the end of the year, his rushing yards, his carries, and his touchdowns went up because at that point we're like, let's let the tiger out of his cage. And now the thing that is going to be a little bit different for you is we were returning a couple really good receivers, and one was going to be able to go back to, I think, a traditional spot. We brought in 3 transfers and guys that are all 6 foot taller and that have shown the ability to go up and get the football. And so Brendan didn't have that last year. And so we saw a lot of stacked boxes, teams, humming in there, which they should, and that type of deal. A lot of press man on the outside, and now we feel like we got some guys that can win in that man coverage if they're going to give us that look. Some guys that can, hey, if something's not right, hey, let's just throw it up there and let that guy make the play. And Brandon hasn't had that since maybe his freshman year, and so I'm excited for some of the weapons that we've been able to bring about him, and that type of deal for him, which is big. And the other thing that's going to kind of change is we got much bigger on the offensive line with, the transfers that we brought in with those seniors. And so we're looking at, last year we played the entire year with 9 offensive linemen, and one of them was injured all year. So it was really 8. And we're at 22 right now. And so, 6 of those came in from other 4-year schools or junior colleges, and they've come in with the ones that played for us. We had 3 guys that started for us, and we brought in 6. We'll be potentially here 6 transfers by say tomorrow. So we're gonna be 9 or 10 deep on that offensive line, and that's the biggest thing. When I first got here, is we had to get that area depth size to be what we want to be, and so we were able to accomplish that this offseason. That was the number one thing I wanted to do this offseason.
Defensively, you mentioned not so much veterans as in eligibility, but veterans that have played the game. And especially in your secondary, and you look at what you've got in the back end of that defense. I think they can hang with anybody in the conference, especially those 2 corners that you're going to be rolling out there. Those kids did a terrific job last year.
Yeah, we got one of them back. One of them actually transferred up. We lost one and got in the days of free agency a little bit there. You get a couple. We got a couple good players picked from us, and then the off season a little bit. But it's everybody goes through that. I'm sure other teams in the conference probably had someone come down and snag a player or two off their roster. It's kind of the pecking order, I guess, that
Yeah.
happens to it. I mean, obviously you're kind of a little disappointed when that happens from a just a selfish individual standpoint, but at the same time these guys get a chance to play a little bit higher level, and hoping they look back on it, they see that we helped them get to that level and have at least a little bit of appreciation for that. But we do return a few of those guys back there, and they all have good ball skills. And then we got one that was academically ineligible last year that is looking like he's going to be eligible this year. So that's another piece that would have been probably a guy that played quite a bit for us on that back end next year. So we're excited about that group overall. We're probably most excited about the changes we made to the defensive line and that deal. With some of the newcomers in here. Got a couple guys that were ineligible, eligible now, to that type of deal. And then we got a couple good looking freshmen that, they're not going to be probably our starters or anything like that, but I think they're gonna end up putting some snaps out there for us. And anytime you play as a freshman, that's usually a good sign that you're gonna be a good player down the line.
Coach, the Sooner, in my mind, is one of the best football conferences in America. And we saw it last year, a three-team tie for the top of the conference. And then you look at Langston, you guys just on the outside looking in. People don't understand around the country how good our conference is. And really, when you look at it, how deep we can go with our teams.
Absolutely. I think it's one of the things is you kind of had kind of why people don't know is you got some teams that have been transitioning over. They haven't been in NEA, forever. Like you look at the Kansas and the Missouri and the Iowa leagues, all those schools have been playing NEI football for a really long time for the most part. There's a few like William Wood started up, Clark started up a little bit later, but Baker's been around forever, Morningside's been around forever, Northwestern. So kind of they've been able to kind of establish a little bit of brand. We got some younger programs, in terms of kind of coming in there. So I think sometimes with that, it's going to take a little bit of time to establish that. But Ottawa started the program not long, was it 6-7 years ago, if I'm correct with that type of deal. Tex West one brought it back, and look where they've gone in 6-7 years with their programs. Louisiana College transition from I think D3 over. So it's a conference of all these teams that are kind of like now starting to just emerge as NAIs, and in less than a decade, they've been able to show that they can compete with some of the blue bloods that have been in NEI football. And I think really all it just needs to take, and is just we got to get one of us to make the playoffs and knock one of them off, and then I think that's going to help us get two teams into the playoffs a little bit, into the expansion and stuff like that. We just got to take that next step as a conference. But it is a really good conference. A lot of us are located in an area of the country that's got great high school football in Arizona and Louisiana and Texas and Oklahoma. We're going to be able to get those kids. Obviously football's changed a lot in the last 3 years with the movement, and there's a lot of opportunities for these programs to pick up kids that from junior colleges to 4-year kids to improve the roster. A lot of those times, the NAIA level tend to be your better football players. And so, I think the league's only going to continue to get better. And then as these teams kind of grow older and mature and get a little bit more, funding, you're going to see the floor start to get a lot closer to the ceiling.
No doubt about it. Well, Cory, I appreciate the time. I know it's busy for y'all, but looking forward to seeing the Aggies this year, and it's going to be a lot of fun to track you guys throughout the year.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's exciting to be back in here. Everyone's 0-0. Everyone's got high hopes, man. So it's a fun time to coach football at this time of year.
No doubt about it, Cory. Good luck this year, and we'll definitely talk to you throughout the year.
All right, take care.
No problem. Head coach Cory Miller from Panhandle State joining us here on our 2024 Sooner Athletic Conference Virtual Football Media Day. We'll be back in a little bit with another one of our outstanding coaches talking about some of our great teams here in the conference.